That's us.
Okay, you ready?
It is Tuesday, April the 12th, 7:05 p.m., and I will call to order the regular meeting of the Millwood City Council for April of 2022. At this time, I would like to take attendance of the council to establish quorum, and Christina, if you would go from there.
Mayor Freeman,
Present?
Councilmember Van Hees,
Here.
Councilmember Sander,
Here.
Councilmember McLaughlin. Here. Councilmember Kohler,
Here.
Councilmember Beasy. Here. Thank you.
All council members are present in chambers, and we have a quorum this evening. So at this time, we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Andy, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, if council has reviewed the actual meeting agenda for tonight, I would ask for a motion to either approve or make amendments to the meeting agenda as presented.
I move approval of the agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the agenda is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. And that brings us tonight to our fire department report from Spokane Valley. And turn you on there.
Good evening, council members. My name is Frank Soto Jr. I am the new fire chief with the Spokane Valley Fire Department. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, and I would like to start that relationship. We're your fire department, and it's important for me that we establish ourselves here and that we report to you monthly so you know what's happening in your district or in your city, and you know what you're getting. So if I may, I will begin if you all are okay. So right here is a heat map of our current all areas up there above Station 2 on the very north west side of the map is the Millwood area. Next slide, please. So for the month of March 2022, we've had a total of 26 incidents in the city of Millwood. Now, incidents are any time 911 is called, so I'll be able to explain that better when we go to the next slide, but I just want you to see 26 incidents. The map area, the beiged out area, is the city's area that we respond to with a little bit of heat map to kind of show where the calls are happening. Next slide, please. Thank you. So you saw 26 incidents in the previous slide. On this slide, you'll see 23. So for the 26 calls that we ran on, we sent 23 units to respond to those calls. So you have an idea. So that means 3 calls were cancellations, which is someone calls 911, and maybe it's just a call that requires the police department to respond, and they have the ability to go ahead and cancel us if they don't need us there for that call. So we had 23 responses. Next slide, please. So this tells you what the top 5 calls are and where they are, the nature of the calls. So 88% of our calls in the town of Millwood are EMS in nature, with some fire, hazmat, tech rescue, and RTF. The top 5 calls out of those 23 that we responded to, 3 were sick calls, 3 were unconscious calls, unconscious patients, 2 were falls, 2 were unknown, which is They didn't know what was wrong. They just knew something was wrong, and they called 911. And then, so this is how it's coded when we get to the call. And then 2 as trouble breathing. So we had somebody with some issues breathing. Next slide, please. So this is year-to-date, so I just want you to be able to look at what we've done this far for the first 3 months. So we've had 77 calls. Next slide. With the 77 calls, we've had 58 responses. Those 58 responses on the next slide, you'll be able to see that almost 91% of the calls have been for EMS. We've had some tech rescue, hazmat, fire suppression, but our top 5 calls are sick calls, unknown, unconscious, psychiatric calls, and falls. And the final slide. This is just a picture, overall picture of the department, what the call is, what's happening in the call. So if you weren't aware, last year we finished with almost 22% increase in call volume for 2021, which is amazingly high. So far this year, we are almost 16% ahead of where we were last year. So there's been a super increase of call volume in our response area and all areas actually within the state and the country as a whole. At this time, before I get into kind of like some special events that occurred here, do any of you have any questions regarding the calls, responses?
When you say tech rescue, is that river rescue, or is that like trench rescue or anything like that, or?
Yes, sir. So there's actually 6 disciplines to tech rescue, or sometimes you might hear it as special operations within the fire department. That's going to be your swift water, river rescue, ice rescue, your trench rescue, confined space rescue, and then high angle and low angle ropes. So it covers all those disciplines. Any other questions?
Any questions? Please
Okay.
continue.
Just a couple other items I had for you, with your patience. We have recently just broke new ground on our new maintenance facility. It's off of Barker and Garland. This will bring us into really the 21st century. Our previous building is 30 years old, and it's so small that we can't even fit some of our units inside the building itself. We have to kind of manipulate it and kind of really snake it in there in order to get just one to fit. So this new facility is something that we had planned on, and that was part of our M&O levy. So we're super excited. It's been a long time coming. We had to wait a whole year because of COVID. That really set us back. So we do apologize for that, but we are making headway now, and we're getting after it. In regards to specific incidents in March that were here in Millwood, we did have a couple of legal burns and a rubbish fire. So I know the rubbish fire on March 11th, there was a lot of, concern. People could see that from far off. It was, we had some homeless people that had started a fire by the river. It was about 30 foot wide, but we were able to put it out. We weren't able to find them, however, so just keep your eyes peeled, and if you see something, say something, call 911, and we'll definitely be out here. Lastly, we've just had a alarm call and a significant vehicle collision where the person ended up in someone's yard and crashed in a couple of vehicles. My understanding is it was a possible DWI event. After the scene was done, we turned over the person to PD. So that's what's happening here in Millwood. And again, I'm very happy to be here if you have any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Thank you very much. We appreciate your attendance here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So that brings us to our consent agenda this evening. Would any member of the council like to take any item of the consent agenda separately? The consent agenda tonight consists of the minutes from the March 2022 meeting, the March 2022 claims, vouchers, and payroll, and treasurer's report, an amended January and February 2022 treasurer's report, and task order 2203, which is the park subdivision work that was brought before the council at the last meeting. Basically, it was the, we asked that we were going to have the consultant go out and do the surveying and the work on the park for the park plan, and this is actually signing of that task order. Anybody like to take any items separately?
I'd like to take the minutes of the March 8th meeting separately, please.
All right, so we will hold the minutes. So at this time, do I have a motion on the consent agenda consisting of 5B, 5C, and 5D?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda, items 5B, 5C, and 5D.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, items 5B, 5C, and 5D of the consent agenda are passed. That brings us to item 5A, taken separately, which are the minutes of the March 2022 meeting. Comments from the council?
I'd like to comment on section 7D, the residential outdoor lighting requirements.
Go ahead, Mr. Sander.
It was noted in the introduction there that Sean had abstained due to a potential conflict of interest. However, the documentation of the motion, Sean was included as first of all, the motion was passed 5-0, and with Sean voting in that motion, he had abstained. So I'd like to remove Sean from the record for voting for, and also change the motion passed to 4-0. Do I need to make a motion to do that? Yeah, I make a motion
So-
to remove Sean from the voting for list, and also to change the motion passed to 4-0.
Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from the council on said motion?
It's accurate by me.
So that we will adjust the minutes to reflect that Mr. Culler abstained and the motion was passed 4-0. At this time, all in favor of Mr. Sanders' motion?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the minutes from the March 8 meeting are amended as requested and approved by the council. Thank you very much. Do we have any need for an executive session tonight? We have no need for an executive session. So that brings us to our action items this evening. Action item 7A is a property acquisition of MAK Properties. Mr. Allen.
Okay, so we have.
Paul. Yes. So I will make a quick note to folks, because we are recording these, it really does help for the recordings for YouTube and for the transcription if we do use the mics on this. Even if you just get your mic on, you don't have to be like me where you're like, ah, but it does pick it up quite well, and it makes it a lot easier, and it makes it a lot easier for folks to hear out there, so thank you.
Okay. So as part of the Argonne Congestion Relief Project, we had to acquire some properties along the right-of-way in order to widen the road out. So two of the properties that we had already approached with offers, one was MAK Properties, which is actually the dentist office. The other one was from Scott Fitzgerald, which is actually the Gerber property. So like you saw in your packet, the offers and their signature. If you had any questions about that, at this point, what we're going to do, or what we'd like to do, is have you authorize the mayor to sign that at some point to finalize those.
So any questions for Paul on the intent? The motion would be to authorize task order 20, for the first 7A, would be authorized task order 2203, which is the purchase of a portion from MAK property, a portion of property from MAK Properties for an amount of $10,900.
MAK properties?
Or is that both of them?
No, no. MAK is $46,006.
No.
Oh, 46,000, excuse me, 46,309.
Oh, wait a minute.
Go far enough.
I'm looking at the wrong
Yeah.
task order. I apologize.
Yeah, because it's actually not a task order. These are just
Sorry.
the offers. And-
So please let the record show that the mayor didn't know what he was talking about at the time. And so what we would ask for item 7A would be acquisition of a portion of land owned by MAK Properties for the amount of $46,309.55.
Is that consistent with our previous
Yeah.
Yes,
direction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dollar amount?
yes.
So that was the offer that we made. They accepted the offer.
Thank you.
And the only change I think it may have been was there was a statutory evaluation allowance. And I had to ask them what that meant. So actually, when they do an agreement like that, there's a $750 allowance for that, which they are able to use for professional services to review the contract. And their cost on that was $309, so that's where that $309 came on to the $46,000.
And we're also agreeing to the temporary construction easement as part of this.
Yes.
This is a package, yep.
Yes, it's a package. So is there a motion on 7A?
I'd like to make a motion that permits the mayor to act on 7A.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, 7A is approved. And so that brings us to item 7B, which is a property acquisition for Scott Fitzgerald, which is the land adjacent to Gerber now, but Mr. Fitzgerald still owns that. Acquiring a portion of Mr. Fitzgerald's property for an amount of $13,706, including authorization of the temporary construction easement.
Right, so there's temporary construction easement on that. There's also damages, which is a cost to cure. And that's basically because they have to move the gas meter that's on this side of the building, on the Argonne side. They have to move it to the north side of the building. And so the damages are, they have to redo the piping on the inside of the building. And that was about $4,700 for that portion of it.
Any questions for Paul on that one? Is there a motion on 7B?
I make a motion to approve 7B, property acquisition for Scott Fitzgerald as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, item 7B is passed unanimously. That brings us to ordinance 524, Comprehensive Plan Amendment 01-2021, updating language in Chapter 7. We'll turn that over at this time to our planner, Ms. Jansen.
Thank you. During this year's annual, or last year's, I guess, annual comprehensive plan amendment cycle, which takes place starting in November, there were 2 comprehensive plan amendments under consideration. Both were city initiated, and those are what I'm bringing to you this evening. The first one, CPA 01-2021, was an amendment proposed by members of the Millwood Historic Preservation Commission requesting to update some language that was in the chapter that had become outdated over time, and to update the goals and policies section of the comp plan to better reflect the current goals and policies of the Historic Preservation Commission. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing on this at their February meeting and has recommended approval of this amendment. I can answer questions if you have any.
Questions for Ms. Jansen? Do I have a motion on ordinance 524 as presented at this time?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 524.
I second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 524 is passed unanimously. That brings us to ordinance 525.
Comprehensive Plan Amendment 02-2021 was a request from the Public Works Director to remove the 6-year transportation improvement plan that was currently in the comprehensive plan. That transportation plan was from 2019. And to replace that with just a reference to the current 6-year transportation plan. This would qualify the city for certain grant funds to have the transportation plan in there. The decision to require it as a reference was made simply to avoid it falling out of date as it had done in the past.
So as Christina says, this basically allows us to do our annual update of the TIP without having to go through and update the comp plan every year as well to reflect the TIP in the comp plan. So it simply points to the current TIP as we approve it. So that is the change in this request. Any questions for Christina? Do I have a motion on ordinance 525 as presented?
I move approval of ordinance 525 as presented to incorporate the tip by reference into the comp plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 525 is passed unanimously. Thank you. So that brings us to ordinance 526, which is a parking ordinance to address some parking issues that we've had. That was instigated by both myself and Mr. Worst. Do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
Let me earn some value tonight. So, trying to recall when we last amended this ordinance, but probably, 10 or so years ago, we implemented this chapter to impose some certain parking restrictions on certain areas of the road, or certain roadsides in the city, and which was the original 10.06.010, and then in the 10.06.020 section of the code, we indicated that those would be marked by signage. What we're asking the council to do is amend those two sections of the city code and establish basically under section 010, a section of city or portions of the city where no parking is allowed to be designated by signage. And then in 020, we're going to ask you to amend that to include certain provisions of what are commonly referred to as the rules of the road, the RCW provisions regarding parking, standing, stopping vehicles on certain portions of the roadway. We currently, the reason we're asking to do that is we would like to be able to use civil code enforcement mechanisms and towing to enforce those parking prohibitions. We currently do not have that. So the only way of enforcing that is through criminal process. That would be calling law enforcement, asking them to come out and cite. And that's not really, it's not feasible, nor is it really responsive to the immediate need of the city or the neighbors or the community or the neighborhood to address those parking restrictions. So the language that is incorporated in the amended portion of 020 is all pulled directly from the revised Code of Washington. It's not language that we've made up. It's all currently law of Washington that could be cited for criminal purposes. We're just wanting to expand the city's opportunity for enforcement opportunities. Is that a fair summary?
That is very much.
Okay. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Worst on this? Mr. Sander?
My section, my question is, section 1, section 2, number 1, number, well, it's the top of page 96, you know, D. Within 25 feet, entrance to any fire station. I don't, how is that gonna affect our existing fire station? Because we don't have a lot of parking there, and aren't some of those existing spaces closer than 25 feet to the entrance?
That I do not know. I don't know if we've
That
been
is
here.
one thing, when I went through this, and, we may have to look at some of that. So, some of it is actually the fire department parking next to their fire station. The public parking is actually supposed to be down a little bit further, so it would be 25 feet away. So, I need something to look into.
Well, or we could entertain a friendly amendment from the council to strike that provision from the, it is part of the rules of the road that could be sanctioned criminally, but we've never asked that that be enforced within the city, and we've actually probably created those parking spots on the roadway. So to the extent it's inconsistent with either our historical practice or what we would expect going forward, I certainly entertain a friendly motion to remove that section 5 of the.
Well, and I would say what this is this is driven by request and complaint. Nobody is going to go out there with a ticket book and start towing vehicles. It is obviously a criminal, it's in the code, it's criminal. If the fire department is using those spaces for their own parking and they are fine with that and they have not complained to the city, then we would not look to enforce that. If for some reason somebody goes out there and parks up on the curb or parks in front right up next to the driveway and the fire department wants it towed, then we would have that ability to tow it. I would say if you want to strike it, that's fine. It would still exist as a criminal offense. So if we did have to use it, if the fire department wanted to do it, they could call the sheriff's office because it still exists at the state level. We've taken this language, as Brian said, directly from RCW. So obviously when we created those spaces, we didn't read the rules of the road because we put the spaces right up there. And the fire department didn't seem to have any issues with saying you've encroached on us based on the rules of the road. So I don't see this as an issue. I think what we have here is rather than cherry pick specific provisions out of this section for the rules of the road, we felt it was more appropriate to encompass or load in the entire rules of the road, when really what we're responding to is we have individuals now, because of the influx of on-street parking, that are parking right up against people's driveways, parking right up against fire hydrants, parking on sidewalks, not really parking close to the curb, just kind of randomly parking around. And we are having folks complain to us, but I think we all know that given current law enforcement issues with staffing and things like that, we're just traffic enforcement, particularly parked traffic enforcement, is not a priority of our contract law enforcement. So
if somebody after we pass this, somebody was to complain about me parking my motorhome in front of Sean's driveway, Christina would call out our local enforcement group to knock on my door.
Well, I think as the code enforcement process is typically progressed in the city, that Christina would contact Mr. Caller and confirm there's an issue of the parking, and then contact you to ask you to move your vehicle.
It goes into normal code enforcement.
Yeah, again, the cities, I don't want to say we're reticent, but education first and then enforcement next. We just don't have an ability to truly enforce parking restrictions on some of the issues that are popping up
And
now.
I don't think I'll park the motorhome or my boat in front of the fire station. It's too damn loud there anyway.
Sean has indicated he's fine with you parking in front of his house.
I think as we've had, I think we've all noticed that we've had more rentals, and with more rentals come more vehicles. So we have had some folks that have said, you know, we get random parkers, things like that. The idea is for us to have a bit of an education campaign for folks that we do get, if we do receive complaints. And then if, you know, punishment is always the last alternative, but if you're going to be recalcitrant, we have no ability, as it currently stands, to do anything like that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sorry. So, Mr. Culler,
Well, just going back to the fire station, it says in compliance with official traffic control devices. So if we have striped lot out there, I mean, it shouldn't be a conflict with parking in front of the station.
yeah, I guess if we really wanted to do, we could say something along,
It says, I would just leave
it
it.
says, yeah, I don't see, as you said, it said, and when properly signposted, upset entrance, I'm saying, okay. So, yeah, we do have official traffic signage out there, which is our stripes and all that stuff. So we have, you know, curbs and setbacks and everything like that. So I do think we're covered under that. Any other questions for myself or Brian on this issue? Do I have, I would look to the council for a motion on ordinance 526 as presented.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 526 as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from the council? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you. So that brings us to Resolution 2022-03, fiscal and financial management related to credit cards.
Do you want to take it, or do you want me?
Why don't you take it, Brian?
You can see us all rock on it, so. So I will tag team with Deb, if that's okay on this one, but I think, did it arise through audit comments, or not a finding, but just fiscal management practices and comments?
Well, it actually arose because inflation has gone up 23%, and we haven't raised the allowance on the credit cards, and now with gas prices, they fill up one dump truck and their card is maxed out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I guess it arose because of the low credit card limits that you currently have. One of the things, and in talking with Debbie, is that I have seen in other jurisdictions, other clients, the auditors they would like to see a more robust credit card policy in terms of proper usage, what it may be used for, and within that policy, the dollar amounts, the spending limits be set, or in accordance with that policy, they be set. So I borrowed from another client their credit card program policy. Actually, it's kind of a hodgepodge of multiples, but what started as just a basic effort to raise the limits, I think, puts the city in a better fiscal and financial positioning and management with a policy that kind of identifies how they'll be used, what they may be used for, and the process for documenting the expenditures. So that's the purpose of the policy. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. I think, as Debbie said, there's going to be some, rollout education process with city staff, just in terms of the documentation processes and all.
But as Debbie did say, we have historically held credit card limits low in the city, but given the fact that We did look into a fuel management program. The issue becomes that we have to pay significant fees for operation of a fuel management program. So sadly, it's just easier for us to authorize the public works folks to use their individual credit cards to fuel the vehicles, things like that. But then when they also have to make purchases at H.D. Fowler or any of those places, we can limit out very quickly on where we've kept the limits to, particularly with the rise in fuel prices, the rise in material prices, things like that. So, as Brian said, it was an opportunity initially to come to the council and say, we need to raise the credit card limits, but also what it came down to was we took the holistic approach to also strengthen our credit card policy. Did we even have one, really?
Yeah, well.
We did.
I think
We did.
strengthens is a good term for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess the one thing I want to make sure I do point out, Section 7 provides for a delegation of authority to the mayor to set those credit card limits, because that could go up and that could go down. I had clients at the outset of COVID immediately set spending limits on credit cards and everything else as they were trying to evaluate, the effects of the pandemic on expenditures, and have gradually increased those over time. So the goal is to provide some flexibility at the local level. Again, these are expenditures that are typically budgeted as operational maintenance expenses. So there's not, the intent of the policy is to not otherwise create a new spending chain for expenditures that are outside of what's already an approved budgetary limitation. So.
Any questions? Mr. Sander?
Does this become part of the employee handbook?
I'm not sure. I think we've kind of drafted it so it's a standalone policy, but I think it would become referenced as, anticipated or expected appropriate behaviors of employees.
It's in the current handbook, so I would assume it would at least be referenced in the new.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Is there a motion from the council on resolution 2022-03 as presented?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2022-03, the fiscal and financial management of with respect to credit cards.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, resolution 2022-03 is passed as presented unanimously. Thank you. And that concludes our action items for this evening and brings us to our departmental reports. We'll begin tonight with our Public Works report. Mr. Allen.
Okay. So I'll start out with water. Christina, can you pull up? So we were working on our New Park well. I think I mentioned that at the last council meeting that I was here, and then I think Kevin mentioned it at the meeting that I wasn't here. That we pulled the pump out, and this is the column pipe that's in there. So as you'll see, it's not only rusty and corroded, it's got some pits in it from the corrosion. So that's some of the pitting that's been going on. And I think there's another picture there that shows a little, that's my finger inside of one of those pits. So we've got some serious deterioration going on in there. So these pipes have been in there for over 40 years. And so we said, and they were tapered column, which they don't even use that pipe anymore. In fact, I'm not sure that they used it at the time that they installed it. It was kind of obsolete at that time too, which is what we found out with a lot of the stuff that went into that well. That well was put in about 1980, 81, 82 area. And so we've had, over 40 years of life with all of the infrastructure that's in there. It's been pulled out a couple of times. The last time it was pulled out, I'm not sure that the contractor did the job that we asked him to do. from the looks of when we pulled it out, it didn't look like it. So if you can go into the next slide. So those are the bowls that are down there. So that's where the pump is actually at. That's at the bottom of the well. So that well is 196 feet to the bottom. And those cylinders there are cast iron. And cast iron doesn't do very well when it's in water for long periods of time. And inside of that is also cast iron. There's no brass in there. So it's amazing that it's actually able to spin. But that's why we were having issues with it every year, trying to get it to turn. If you show one more slide. So that's the screen that was on there. So that whole thing was pulled out in 2006. And so that's how much it deteriorated. So that was not a stainless steel screen that was put on there.
That's not a Johnson screen.
No, it's not.
Even though that's a screen.
Yeah,
Is this a basket strainer?
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so after we saw that, we had them camera the well. So we put a camera down in there, and we looked at the inside of the casing pipe. And the casing pipe looks it's in good shape. I looked at the joints as it was going down. The clarity of the water was good. We got down to the bottom, and we saw there's another screen down in there where that casing is, and that's where the water inflows into the casing, and then it's picked up by the pump and then pushed up from there out to the system. So luckily it was being protected by the outer screen that we had, and that screen looks really, really good. It's a stainless steel screen, so the infrastructure inside of the well casing itself is intact, looks good. We shouldn't have any, I can't foresee any issues for that for probably another 40 years, you know, I don't know. We'll just have to, assuming that it'll last, yes. You'll be here longer than me, let's put it that, and I mean, most of us, but yeah, so that screen that's in there at the bottom is 20 feet high. So there's lots of perforations in there. The mayor and I both looked at the video in it, and it looks good. It's got a nice pack around it. You can see where it's been pulling the water into it. And it's, like I said, we're pulling that down at about 190 feet is where the intake, I think, is coming into it. So the water level at that is 43 feet. So there's a lot of water that's in that aquifer. So we're down pretty deep into the aquifer where we're actually doing the pulling. So if there's any contaminants, most of those contaminants are going to be at the upper levels of the aquifer. So it's our best well, and I think we need to make sure that we keep the integrity of that by paying to replace the interior portions of that pump. So I know we came to you last time because we knew that we were going to have to replace that column pipe and the stem on it. But now we need to replace those bowls. So those bowls are about another $15,000 to $18,000. So we're going to ask you for another $20,000 to allow us to go ahead and replace that portion of it. We've ordered the motor. We've got the soft start, or we've ordered the soft start as well. But I think at this point, it doesn't make any sense to not put the best equipment we can back into the hole, and it should last another, like I said, 40 years. So that's going to be my recommendation for that. Does anybody have any questions about the new park well?
Any questions for anyone? Yeah, the well screen itself is in beautiful shape. It's just, as Paul said, it really looks like, even though that well was installed in the 80s, somebody went out and found something that came from the 50s and loaded it down in there. And with those cast iron bowls, the last thing, and the way the impellers were running, the last thing we want is for a bowl to break or the shaft to break, and with that cast iron, it'll just turn into shrapnel and it'll destroy that well. And then It's not just replacing the bowls and the stem, it's drilling a brand-new well. Because if you look down in there, the great thing about that is when they cambered it, you can see it's good old Spokane aquifer. So if we lose that, we're gonna get boulders in there, because you can see cobbles and stuff right up against a screen like this, which, fantastic for well production, but you lose that screen, those things come right in, and that well's, as you know, that well's toast. So, I agree with Paul that it's, as long as we have everything out and we have the opportunity to bring it up to the 21st century, we should. So Paul, do we need to ask the council to approve an additional 20,000?
We do.
And that would come from the utilities fund, but we had not, since we had not budgeted that at this time, since we had not budgeted this expense, we need the council to approve the expenditure.
Right. And then we will account for that in the amendment, as long as I have an approval now, so.
So we would be asking the council, before Paul goes through Public Works report at this time, for a motion to approve expenditure of an additional $20,000 to replace the bowls and impellers on the New Park well.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, and that is, Paul is still waiting on, we've asked to approve up to $20,000. I think we thought it was going to come in at about 16, but there's so much up in the air with shipping and freight, and the materials prices fluctuate daily that it's better to cover ourselves a little bit, because I think you had something going on where the shipping prices went up.
Oh, yeah, they went up like another 12% on, well, not just the shipping. The shipping's gone up, but also the cost of the materials has gone up by 12%. So we're able to get the,
Soft start.
soft start, yeah. My mind's much tonight. Yeah, and so we did get that ordered, so we're held to that, locked in at that price. But, everybody, all the vendors we're talking to, all the prices are going up. Fuel prices have gone up, cost of materials have gone up. It's just the way the world is right now. So if we get locked in at these things, get it going, because we want to be able to get that well back into production before summer. So we're trying to scramble this. So I wasn't able to get you any of this information. I was on vacation last week, but we didn't actually get the results from the bowls being torn down until right after I left. And then they contacted me and the guys and let them know what was going on with that. And so I told them we had a council meeting tonight. We would talk about it, get it approved, and then move forward.
Paul, you want to continue?
Yeah. Let's see. For the sewer lines, we had the sewer lines cleaned. So we actually cleaned areas 3 and 4 this year. So, and then we did the lift stations. That's a preventative maintenance we do. So typically we do an area per year. This year there was a little mix-up with the contractor and staff as to which was which area. And so one area got cleaned again, that got cleaned last year. So it was actually pretty good shape, and they were able to do it really quick. So it hopefully didn't cost us a lot of money for that. But anyway, so we did get the other area cleaned and then the lift stations. We also sent out the pre-treatment survey letters. So if you recall, we did add a charge to the commercial businesses for the pre-treatment. We started that survey 2 years ago. The letters went out in March of 2020 when everything shut down. So we got very little response back from that. And so we kind of regrouped, figured out what we're going to do for the pre-treatment and coming up with that fee to cover the costs of that. And then we sent out those letters again to this year to all the same, pretty much the same people that we sent to in 2020, but it was, you know, like all the commercial accounts. So we'll get the results from that. They're coming in really well, which is good. A lot better response than we had 2 years ago. So once we have that information, then we'll tally it up, figure out which, what the tiers are for the pretreatment for the different situations, and then get that information to the county to meet our obligation with them. Streets were swept, partially swept anyway. The weather kind of put a damper in that. Those cold nights and snow yesterday didn't help. So they were back out again today doing some of that. So you'll probably see them out and about the next couple days and maybe even to next week to finish that up. The park crew or the maintenance crew has been busy out there in the park too. So our park restrooms, we doing a pretty good renovation on that. They haven't been painted or anything for quite a few years on that. And so we ended up having to do a bunch of pressure washing. Before we ended the season, we actually had a bunch of graffiti in there. So we had to remove all of that graffiti in there, remove some of the old paint, do a lot of priming on that old building. And then they're doing the painting, but we're kind of waiting for the weather to warm up just a little bit now. And then we've put some new LED lights in there, so it's really bright in there now. It's not going to be dingy, which is safer for everybody. And I think we're going to change those outside lights to LEDs as well, just for the same thing. So the last thing that they're doing is putting those new sinks in there. And so we're just going to paint it. Once it's painted, then we'll put the sinks in there and be ready to go. So hopefully have this done. Typically, we try to get that open by spring break, but it just didn't work out this year. There was just too much to be done, and we couldn't start because of the cool weather. So anyway, but we will have it, our goal is to have it open by the first part of May. So it will be open for the farmer's market and all that. Let's see, you may have noticed that Vista installed a bunch of tall poles out there along Locust from the substation there, and then across Trent, and then they were heading west to Frey on that. So that's a new transmission main that they're running. So I don't know if you've gotten any phone calls from any of the citizens about, you know, what's going on over here with the substation or anything, but that's what it is, a new transmission main there. And then they actually had some helicopters that were flying overhead because that's how they had to be able to run that power up to those poles. So they were given a very short period of time from DOT, Spokane Valley, I'm not sure who else the other jurisdiction was on this, but in order to cross Trent. So they had to do it like at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. So they were, if you heard helicopters, that's what they were doing.
They did not get started then.
Didn't they?
No.
Okay. The tree board. So the tree, I'll just give you a quick tree board report. So we did put in for the grant for the tree inventory and to hire a consultant to do a management plan. So far, we have not heard back yet from DNR. I think there was a lot of people that put in for it because there was a lot of money that was available. So we're still hopeful. We haven't heard no, but we haven't heard yes either. And I put a email into Ben Thompson at DNR, and I haven't got a response yet. So I'm guessing they're still reviewing all of the applications. So I guess no news is good news for right now. So, any questions?
Questions for Paul? Busy time in Public Works.
It is.
Thank you, Paul. So that brings us to our treasurer's report. Of note, this treasurer's report is the year-end report. Deb, take it away.
So I put that report in your packets. I'm not going to do a presentation on it, but if there's any questions, let me know. You can ask them now or email me or call me or whatever you like. I know I said last month that hopefully the audit was going to be wrapping up. It's still going. So it's the audit that will never end. They are doing the last part of it, which is some reconciliation with financial statements. So hopefully that's about done. And following some information I received from Brian this evening, I'm going to be filing our first ARPA report soon. So, any questions?
So the only question I have is, on the, just for the utility fund, we had quite a bit of budget put into the utility fund in 2021, but our expenditures were basically half that. What was the reason for that?
We didn't purchase the generator. Yeah. So that was put off another year.
Okay.
So,
So that is, of note, that is the biggest difference in why we have such a large discrepancy in expenditures in utilities, so thank you. Any questions for Deb on that? Any questions for Deb on anything else that's going on with the city? Yes, for the ARPA, we will more than likely, based on some released guidance from the federal, from the feds on ARPA funds, we will likely be coming to council with some proposals for how to use our remaining ARPA funds for what was not spent in 2021 and what will be entitled to us this year, 2022. So look forward to that at the next meeting. Christina, Clerk, Planning, Code Enforcement.
I have quite a few things this evening. I'm going to go backwards from my normal, starting with code enforcement. Just noticing an uptick in code enforcement complaints in the last couple of weeks. Kyle has been out investigating, taking some photos. I think we may be dealing with some neighborhood disputes, trying to have us solve those. So we're trying to wade through those right now, but we are seeing an uptick in code enforcement. From the planning department, I just wanted to update you. The planning commission is continuing to work on that update of the zoning code. They started that at their March meeting, the last week of March, and then elected to schedule another special meeting, which is tomorrow night, to continue the review of that project so that they can conduct their public hearing at the end of this month and move that update on to you all for approval. That has been years in the making, so they've done a lot of work, and from a staff standpoint, what they've done is really going to be helpful in our office, so appreciate them and all their hard work on that. Following that public hearing at the end of this month, they will begin working with the consultant on the plan for the park, so you will be hearing reports about that. And then I also just wanted to let you know that we did get 3 applicants for the Historic Preservation Commission. So that was good. Very nice just to have folks showing interest. The mayor is going to be meeting with some of those folks, and we hope to have appointments at the next meeting. From the clerk's office, I have quite a few things here. I wanted to update you. I had told you previously about our scanning project, that we were going to have that project begin again here coming up. I have a meeting tomorrow with the consultant on that, and so we should be getting those records rescanned here in the coming, starting that project here in the coming weeks. So we're looking forward to that. I've been working with the mayor and the consultant on the best way to accomplish that, and I think we've got a good plan in place. The spring newsletter went out in your water bills today. You will see it when you get those, but I wanted to touch on a couple of items. After 2-year closure, the wading pool is going to be open this summer, so that's good news. And that means that we have a couple of lifeguard positions available, 16 and older with a lifeguard certification. Is that correct? And CPR?
Yeah, it's water CPR, first aid, which they can acquire online now, so you don't have to have a full-blown lifeguard certification.
Okay, so we have 2 positions open. For that, we're also going to need a park attendant for the summer months. That person needs to be 18 with a valid driver's license. So if you know of anyone who might be interested in those positions, send them our way. I got a call today, I wanted just to let you know, from an individual who received grant funds for the utility grant, wanting to call and express her thanks for that, specifically to Lisa. She named by name. Lisa was very helpful to her. So that's good news and nice to hear. We don't get a lot of those. And then I just want to run down some dates for you of things that are going on. Remember that next Wednesday, the 20th, beginning at 5 o'clock, we're going to be having the open public meetings training here at 5 o'clock. The photographer will be set up to take your website pictures. We will have dinner, and then training will begin at 6. That's going to be Council, Planning Commission, Historic Preservation, Tree Board. So we're going to have the whole gang together for the first time, I think. Also on April 20th, prior to our event at 5, there is an event at the Pumpkin Patch just north of the river that's being sponsored by the Millwood Community Association and Millwood Impact. That is a preview of the events at the farmers market, and then an opportunity to learn about the Pumpkin Patch and what they do and how they run that. So that will take place ahead of our event there. On the 28th, again, the Community Association is hosting a get-together just for the community at Bottles. If any of you are interested in attending that, again, that's the 28th at 4:30. If we're going to have multiple folks there, we might want to notice that, so let me know if you plan to attend. On the 29th, which is a Friday, we're going to have an Arbor Day celebration over by our new parking strip behind the Masonic Temple. If you can attend that, we sure would appreciate that. And then on May 21st, we've got 2 events going on. One is the tire collection event, which is going to be set up, as I understand it, at the east end of the park. Tires with no rims being accepted there. And then in addition to that, we are having that city cleanup day, that same day from 9 to noon. We've talked a little bit more about that with staff. We're hoping to get a good turnout of our electeds and our appointeds to kind of help us wrangle our volunteers throughout the city. We're going to focus just on trash cleanup with supplies and help from Spokane County. And then I'm reaching out also to some groups that have called the city recently looking for volunteer opportunities. So we're hoping to get a good turnout, meeting in the park at 9 a.m. that morning and then fanning out throughout the city. That is all that I have tonight, unless you have any questions for me.
I do have a question. Thank you for your report. You mentioned at the beginning that there was an uptick in complaints without divulging like who complained. What was the nature? I mean, is it like parking issues or is it like
Generally,
too many chickens?
No. Generally speaking, trash and junk vehicles. But again, it seems like it might be beyond kind of what we're able to do, but we are investigating, and so, yeah, but generally speaking, trash and junk vehicles.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Christina?
Could you send me those dates in an email that you just went over?
Yes, I will. In fact, I will send them to all of you.
In the newsletter.
Yes, they are, except for the open public meetings training, which is next Wednesday, but they are in your newsletter.
And the open meetings training, we need to redo every 2 years or every year?
Is it? I thought it was every year.
I think it's every 2. Yeah, I believe it's every 2 years, but I think it's really pertinent this year because of the amendments to the legislation and in terms of how public comment will be addressed. So, I mean, it will be a training, but there's also going to be a point where I think we're going to look to the council for some guidance on how you want to proceed with receipt of public comment. There's now options, but each option has its positives and its negatives too. So we just need to kind of figure out what's gonna be the best for Millwood.
We have a couple of our groups too, I think Historic Preservation and for sure the Tree Board, that have never sat through that meeting before, but they've sort of positioned themselves in the past year or so to really need that training, so.
Yeah, and I think it's just good just coming out of remote meetings. I think Millwood was good on its meeting etiquette, but there were some agencies and there were some boards and commissions and councils that, remote meetings, sometimes made it too convenient to have a meeting. Often I attended meetings where people were, engaging in activities or food and beverage consumption that you might not otherwise do here, right? There were meetings with various entities where, appointed or elected officials decided to take the Zoom meeting from the backyard. And, and I think I will say that it's just easier to focus in person and get stuff done than it was remotely. So it's just a good refresher that we're, again, knock on wood's the key, we're returning to normalcy in how we conduct official business, so.
I may not be able to attend. My wife's having surgery that day, so
That
she may be home or she may not be home.
that is understandable, and I think anything. Obviously, there'll be a YouTube video that you may watch later on, so you can. But understood that is there. But Mr. Worst stole all my thunder for my mayor's report. I was going to make it clear or really try and emphasize the fact that this open public meetings training is going to be critical for a number of reasons based on the new legislation that was just passed and signed by the governor. We do have a few decision points as a city, all agencies, all commissions, everything like that do regarding, as Brian said, how we take public comment. For some of our other boards, it's important to understand what constitutes an open public meeting, what constitutes noticing of a meeting. There are some changes that we all need to be aware of, and we need to implement, and we need to determine as groups how we are going to implement those changes. So please be there if you can. If you can't, it's going to be really important that you do watch the recording of the open public meetings training.
Can I just add one thing to your comments there too? And the training's pertinent not just because of the circumstances. I will say that 2 hours before the meeting tonight, we were on the phone because the remote meeting function that we have on YouTube wasn't working. So we were scrambling, a little bit of choice language here and there on our communications on what we were gonna do, but we were scrambling to try to figure out how we were going to be able to hold the meeting and otherwise meet the legal requirements that are now imposed as a result of the legislation. So I think it's good for you to understand the process that goes into how we all get here with those meeting notice requirements as well. So.
And one thing I think this is going to do, and Brian, you can chime in if you think if I'm overstating. I think that with the new rules, you're going to see a lot of people who in the past have tried to exploit OPMA, really taking a hard run at seeing what they can do and who they can catch not following the OPMA. And there are things that of Open Public Meetings Act that fall into the Public Records Act. And so one of the things I have asked Brian is, as part of this, to really try and explain, maybe not necessarily to this group here, but to others, what are records that need to be preserved and what are records of records with minimal retention value. So really understanding the difference in a text message that somebody might send you, or an email, or what needs to be preserved, or what note on a piece of paper that you had, because I do think that there are going to be times when we are going to get requests from folks who may not necessarily be residents of the city, just to see what we are doing with respect to, are we following the law? So,
Yeah, I would just echo, it's not just citizens' requests, and I think you're gonna see coming back out of the remote meeting where circumstances where everything was kind of, yeah, we're all trying to do the best we can. I think you're gonna see in the next couple of years, you're gonna see open government principles become an audit focus as well. You know, especially if you're in an accountability audit, it's just gonna happen. And, you know, I think there were some agencies that, you know, there's always a few that seem to do the best they can and comply with the requirements. There's others that know the requirements in here, and they operate on this side, and they're happy with that. So, yeah, whether it's citizen issues and inquiry and government transparency, or whether it's compliance with audit requirements, we want to satisfy both, so.
and that concludes my mayor's report for this evening. So, Mr. Wurst, any questions for me on anything going on? Thank you. So, Mr. Wurst, legal report.
I have nothing additional to add other than the input on the agenda items tonight, and basically the stealing of thy thunder from the mayor on his report. So happy to answer any questions. Yeah, happy to answer any questions the council might have those. So.
Any questions for Brian? So that brings us to our information items. No action or discussion. You would note on items 9C and 9D on your agenda, those were actually carryover items from the actual departmental reports. So those items are not actually included in the information items, but we do have the scraps report for February and the sheriff's report for February in there for your review. So at this time, I will open it up to council remarks, and I'll just start here adjacent to me and work around. So Ms. McLaughlin, council remarks.
Yes, I wanted to let everyone know that I will be submitting my resignation letter from the city council by the end of this week, because I am moving out of Millwood. So this is my last meeting, and I thank you very much, and I will not be attending the open public meeting. So.
It's an open meeting. Anybody can.
So Kate, we've really appreciated having you here on the council, and your expertise and your input was welcome. And so we wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for all your service, and you will be missed. So thank you.
Are you staying in the area?
Yeah, city of Spokane.
So I guess with that, what is the process for us to, I would begin the process of looking for an appointment or a replacement?
Yeah, the statutes, the RCWs do not outline a specific process, they just outline a timeline. And so there's a 60-day window where the city has the exclusive jurisdiction. That's 60 days from the date of the position become vacant. So that would be 60 days from the date that you give the notice, effective notice. Historically, what the city has done is I think there's been a solicitation or a communication of anyone seeking interest in the council. And that's typically done at the mayor and the administrative level, some vetting of potential candidates. Council members have also communicated to members in the community that, if there's anybody that's expressed interest in city government, and directed them to administration's attention. And then you vet folks of interest, not only of interest, but understanding of the, of both the laws and the requirements on the city council. I think, I have seen in some instances where individuals have expressed, I'm not saying this specific to Millwood, but individuals expressed interest in being a part of the city and the government, and then they get into it and they realize it's not exactly what they thought it would be. That there are, even though we are a very, I would say from a legislative body, the city council operates informally, but but effectively. Sometimes you don't see that in other jurisdictions as well. So I think it's good if somebody's expressed interest, that's definitely the primary approach. We also want to have somebody that understands what it is, what the role of the city council means. Doesn't mean that you have to be unanimous in every vote, it just means that they have an understanding of acting in the best interest of the city. So.
So my intent would be to open up a solicitation, vet candidates, and then I would like to bring a candidate forward to the council for consideration for approval. So that's kind of what I would be working for in as quickly a time frame as possible. So thank you very much on that. So Mr. Culler.
Thanks, Kate. We'll miss you, and good luck at the next venture. And then tire pickup is May 21st. I had no SWAC meeting this month, so I have nothing to report about solid waste advisory committee stuff.
Thanks, Sean. Mr. Van Hees.
Tuesday, I have my shoulder surgery, so you might not get the best Andy on Wednesdays. We'll have to.
But we'll get the funnest Andy,
Oh,
right?
I will be a barrel of fun.
And you don't take a bad picture, so we're good
I
there.
don't.
Yeah.
I don't think about it. The camera loves me. But we'll have to play Wednesday by ear.
Okay.
I'll let you know as soon as I know. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you, Kate, for best wishes for the future.
I echo everybody else. Thank you very much, Kate, for serving. It's been fun. I had the opportunity with Shireen and Teresa Sadler and a few other people from Impact Millwood and an organization called Growing Neighbors to do some neighborhood canvassing. That was an eye-opener, but I have to say to the Public Works Department, seriously, you guys are the fans of the park and how the park is ran was just all over that neighborhood over there, every door we went to, so thank you very much. That's it.
Mr. Mayor, I have another comment.
Yes, sir.
Does Kate know that she has a responsibility to provide a couple names to you? Couple candidates?
Yeah, it's, you have to
Fill your spot.
kill it and then eat it or whatever, however it goes.
This is what a comedian calls a callback. This is the effective yet informal operation of the city council. So I do want to take the opportunity, Kate, thank you very much. I work with a lot of public agencies. I loved how you just jumped into this. And I think the other thing that I just want to emphasize is that you in your professional life engaged in public service, and you also did it in your free time. And that's all you can ask of somebody. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So any announcements? I think you went through all the announcements that we have. We have quite a bit of stuff coming up. I see Shireen in the back there, so if anybody has any questions on any of the Millwood Community Association items that Christina asked, there'll be time to ask Shireen after the meeting. But we'll get that out to everybody at the council. As Paul pointed out, it's also in the newsletter. So we do have a lot of stuff going on. Get ready for summer. If anybody has a son, daughter, niece, nephew, annoying person across the street, as Paul said, we can use a couple lifeguards and a park person. So please steer folks our way. I have no other announcements. If anybody has any announcements they want to make. So at this time, I would set our next regular meeting for May the 10th, 2022 at 7 p.m. here in person. And that leads us to adjournment. Do I have a motion from the council to adjourn this meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Take us out. So moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.